right, y'all. As you listen to and learn this process, I want you to consider using it on your solitary walks so that you can practice the skill. And then I want you to have an intention to use it throughout the day. All right, I hope y'all enjoy. All right, what's up, y'all? Got a great little topic I want to talk about today. If I can hold this freaking selfie stick this whole time without my arm wearing out. But it's something that I've been percolating on for a while and just continuing to hone just a little bit. And I got some handy little notes here just to keep me on track because I got a lot of little mini topics I want to talk about within this topic. And so the topic is developing a process for creating the life that you want and which ultimately leads to happiness, okay? And although I think, all of us would acknowledge that there's many things that we need to focus on to be healthy and happy, like nutrition and sleep and fitness and that kind of stuff. What I'm really talking about here is the mental and emotional component. And so I'm going to give you this 4-step process at the end of this, but I want to talk about some mini concepts within that can help us understand why this process is so beneficial. And I also want to reiterate that the reason I feel like I'm a good teacher for this is not because I'm self-righteous and I have it all together and I'm perfect and all that kind of stuff. It's because I'm just like you and everybody else. Like I have all these same issues going on. I'm just committed to tinkering with it every single day. So I get up, I have my meditation and my envisioning every morning, and then I leave that session and I have some vows, and my vows are basically like the game is on and I'm watching what's going on up in my mind, my self-talk, my triggers, and I'm just working with this stuff all day. And then as I work with it, I work with clients and we continue to hone this process together, okay? So super solid. And of course, like I'm always talking about this stuff with my good friends like Colby and other people that are committed to just implementing this stuff on a daily basis anyway. So here's the deal. Like I said, I'm going to go over a 4-step process, but I want to cover some mini concepts. And just in a nutshell, this is the key to living an amazing life. Now, by the way, this is also the key to having an amazing solitary walk, which we're big fans of. We're big fans of going on a walk without your phone, without technology, ideally without anybody else, so that you have your own mind time, right? So that you can let yourself be creative and expansive and empowering. And so this process works for walks. That's a really good time to practice it, but it also works for the entire day as you're just living your life, okay? So here it is. You want to be as present as possible, as often as possible. Meaning you want to be here in the moment as often as possible, right? You want to be when you're thinking, you want to be thinking about what you want and moving towards what you want, and you want to notice when you're not, so that you can flip it and turn it back into focusing on something that you want and moving towards the thing that you want, okay? Now, to unpack that, I want to go through some little mini concepts, right? So the first one is understanding the conscious and the non-conscious mind, or the higher self or spirit, or whatever the heck you want to call that, okay? I probably need to come up with a phrase or a term for the non-conscious, unconscious mind, which I always also call the higher self or the spirit. But anyway, there's a difference between the two. Most people would acknowledge we have a conscious and a non-conscious mind. The conscious mind is where we do our deliberate thinking, decision making, make our choices and things like that, right? It's the part of your mind that you're aware of right now. But there's a whole other part, an intelligence that's behind the scenes doing all kinds of other things, so like my cellular communication, my system communication, my heartbeat, my breathing. There's just so many things that are happening that I'm not consciously making happen. Now, from a mental perspective, we have all our different sensory input. It's estimated, come on, bud, over here. It's estimated that we have billions of bits of information coming to us at any given moment. All right. Now, the conscious mind can't deal with that much info. So that info gets chunked down. And I have to filter out a lot of that info because I can only consciously focus on a certain amount of things at a time, right? We all know that. So the reality is that whatever I'm perceiving at any given moment is not the total picture. It's my perception of the total picture based on my filters and what I'm letting into my experience. Now, the big question is, what is it that determines those filters? What is it that determines, what I'm consciously allowing into my experience? This is your self-talk and your self-programming, okay? Now, when I say self-talk, I'm talking about verbal talk, and I'm also talking about silent talk that you're just talking to yourself in your head. So whatever it is that I'm saying to myself on a regular basis, it's like I'm feeding myself search criteria, right? And my unconscious, non-conscious, higher self, spirit, whatever you want to call that, takes that search criteria and it looks for evidence in the environment to support it. So whatever it is that I'm saying on a regular basis to myself, I look for proof of it at an unconscious level, not consciously, right? So if I'm sitting here all day, every day, complaining, right? Freaking life sucks, people suck, my finances suck, like I can't do anything right, nothing ever goes my way, and I keep saying that to myself, well, I look for proof of that, and then I'm like, well, see, this is proof, like this is what's happening in my life, right? And contrast that if I'm like constantly saying positive things to myself and affirmations, and I have envisioning statements and a vision for myself, and I see myself with financial freedom, financial independence, and in a healthy relationship, and like, first of all, just saying that right now feels very positive and open and liberating and expansive, but also I'm giving my non-conscious, unconscious spirit, higher self search criteria to look for things in my environment that support what it is that I keep saying to myself. And this is why a lot of us that are on this path, that are committed to trying to focus on what we want so as much as possible, we see like things that seem magical just pop into our experience, like synchronicities and coincidences, and it's not that they're necessarily these bizarre things, although they seem like it. It's really that my non-conscious, unconscious, higher self, my spirit, is pulling these potentials into my environment and my experience to support the thing that I'm saying to myself, but that's happening at an unconscious level. An example that I use with people all the time is, my arm's getting tired. If I sit here and talk to you about black Jeeps for an hour, like guaranteed you're going to go out and you're going to notice more black Jeeps on the road. Because at an unconscious level, you've kind of changed your filters to look for something different. It's a very similar process, right? So the more that I can program myself with positive things and notice when I'm not, the more that I'm going to start to bring those things into my experience. And this is absolutely true. Like it is not any kind of a woo-woo concept. Like this is the deal. Because again, I can only focus on so many things consciously, but non-consciously, I have a lot of information coming to me. And so I want to dictate what those filters are, okay? Now, so the key with this is we want to notice when we're not focusing on what we want. We want to notice when we're being negative and caught up and triggered and upset and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, in this noticing process, I want us to understand that it's primordial in us, it's evolutionary in us to think about what's wrong, because then we have a chance to fix what's wrong and make it better. But the problem is most of us stay there way too long. We don't use the figuring out or focusing on what's wrong as an opportunity to change it or fix it. Most of us brood, we just sit there and we think about this thing and it keeps popping up and we keep having these conversations and soap operas in our mind and should have and could have and would have and anxiety and it just goes in a million different directions, right? And the problem with that is, again, we're creating more of what we don't want if we don't learn to change that story or to reframe it or rewrite the script or something, okay? So I think it's beneficial to have these moments of noticing yourself upset and disappointed and unsatisfied and whatever that is. I think that's fine. We just want to notice it because those are like our little reminder bells to change the way that we're thinking. And in fact, it's almost like I want to be thankful for these suboptimal moments, and I want to be thankful for these funky days and these periods of just things not seeming to go our way, because it helps us to clarify what we want. If I'm going through a financially difficult time, that I have to be beneficial, or I have to be thankful for that, because it's clarifying what I want. I don't want that anymore. What is it that I do want? And I can focus on that thing. It's beneficial to be in a crappy relationship and realize it, because then you can look for something better. It clarifies what you want. So having these suboptimal moments is really a great thing, as long as you are committed to this process that we're talking about today. And as long as you're not stuck in those things and dwelling on them and brooding on them too long, all right? So we want to use every one of our funks and suboptimal moments and negative self-talk and all those different things. We want to use those as like reminder bells to bring us back to what it is that we really want to do and help us clarify what it is we really want, okay? Now, I mentioned before, part of this process is being as present as often as possible. I think the problem is most people don't know what the heck presence is. I gotta switch hands here because my hand's getting tired. So most people have no idea, including myself. Like for years, I have read mindfulness and meditation books, self-improvement books, and I mean, just like, I can't even count how many of them. It's been hundreds. And a lot of them talk about present moment and being in the present. And I've always been like, what does that really mean? Like that just, it sounds like a good idea, but I don't think most people understand what it really means, okay? Being present really means just being here focused on what's in front of you. And based on that definition, being present can mean working on your computer, working on a project, deliberately thinking about something, being in a conversation, being in a talk, and completely being there. Presence can mean a lot of different things, but there's like an active presence like that, where I'm actually doing something in the present moment and my attention is focused on what's in front of me. But then there's also just being here in the experience of what is, right? And my favorite way to cultivate that is through listening, feeling the body, and then the breath, right? Those are traditional meditation focuses. Ideally, we want as much time in this present moment as possible, free of the thinking, even if it's deliberate thinking, even if it's focusing on something that you have to work on or do. We want a lot of time where we're just present. And the reason for this is because, again, talking about the non-conscious, unconscious, higher self spirit, this is where a lot of that work is being done. It's a supercomputer that's working in the background. And the more stuff I have going on up in my head, the more clouded that process becomes, okay? So if I have a computer and I have an application open on my computer, that's like the conscious mind, right? That's where I'm actually typing some stuff in and working. Say I have a word processing document open. The non-conscious mind is the supercomputer, the operating system in the background, okay? Now, if I have a ton of applications open and a ton of browser windows open on my computer, then my performance slows down, right? It's the same thing. I want that to be clean and clear sometimes, you know, I would say as often as possible, but at least sometimes, so that that operating system, so that that non-conscious, unconscious mind can do its powerful work, all right? So it's almost as if you have to think that in the space, in my presence, in the absence of thinking, I'm still thinking, but at an unconscious, non-conscious level. And it's extremely beneficial thinking. So this is why a lot of us, the more space we create, the more epiphanies we have, the more drop-ins we have, the more realizations, the more great ideas, right? I can even feed myself a question. Say I have a little problem that I just can't figure out. You know, I'm working on this new membership system for all our people. I'm at this little point and I'm like, I just can't figure out how to make this work or something, right? I can tell myself, hey, higher self, spirit, non-conscious, whatever I want to call that, help me figure this out. Give me a solution here. And then I walk away from it and I go do something else, or I go for a walk and I try to create some space and some presence, and maybe I do some meditation or something. And sure enough, the more that I do that, the more that eventually, boom, I get a realization. There's my solution. But those realizations are not going to come if I'm constantly up in my head, and especially if I'm constantly up in my head with negative thoughts. So this is why presence is so important. Okay, we need presence to create space, because in the space, the non-conscious, unconscious, higher self and spirit is doing that supercomputer operating system background work. Okay. I would say that the more that we can notice ourselves thinking and come back to the present moment, the better, okay? And think about it like this. When I notice myself thinking, temporarily, I'm not. As soon as I notice myself thinking about anything, whether it's positive or negative, temporarily I'm not. It's impossible, because that is awareness. That is true presence, right? And I would say the more that you can notice yourself thinking, the better, even if it's positive, because the default is to always think, right? So sometimes I'll be brooding over something, or will be brooding over something, right? And it's like, but I need to think about this, right? Maybe it's something that's really dragging you in, and you're like, in your mind, you're like, yeah, but I got to think about this. And well, the default is to think about it. So the more that you can turn away from that, the better, because the more you're giving your non-conscious and unconscious and higher self and spirit, the more you're giving that supercomputer, that operating system, a chance to work on that stuff in the background. And sure enough, the more space you give something, usually the more solutions come out of it. And I'm not saying not to sit and work and deliberately think. It's just that we want to be aware of the texture and the quality of those thoughts and that thinking. And we want to make sure that it's in the right direction. And I would say that you want to make sure that your thinking is deliberately planned. That you spend time working on something, but you also spend time not working and not thinking and playing this little game, okay? That's why I love the solitary walks, because these solitary walks are great opportunities to play this game where you notice yourself thinking, come back to the present moment through listening or whatever it is. And that's also what we do through meditation, okay? So I think that's a very important concept to understand, is that the default is to think, because sometimes we get caught up in like, yeah, but I want to and I need to, and this is important, or this person really pissed me off and I have to, it's like the default is to think about it. So why not turn away from it as much as possible and become completely present through listening, feeling, or focusing on the breath, okay? All right, so let's bring that all back. We've talked about these prerequisite concepts, which is basically the conscious mind and non-conscious mind. Conscious mind, where I'm doing my thinking. Non-conscious is the background supercomputer working in the background, right? And then we've also talked about the importance of how that filters out information in our experience, and what determines that filter is our self-talk and our self-programming, which makes it extremely important to always be focusing on what you want and moving towards what you want versus thinking about what's wrong and what you don't want, okay? It's okay to think about what's wrong as long as you catch that, so that you can use that as a reminder bell to flip it into something more positive, okay? All right, so then we also talked about the importance of presence. We need presence. We need presence absent of thinking and working on projects and things. We need true presence, because that space is where the non-conscious and unconscious and higher self and spirit do most of its work. And that's how we get creativity and inspirations and epiphanies and drop-ins and ideas and solutions and all kinds of things like that, right? Just try it out and you're going to see it work. It's like magic, all right? So here is the process to bring it all back, all right? Number one, you want to notice. Notice yourself thinking. Notice yourself caught. Notice yourself triggered. Notice yourself caught up, all right? You want to notice, then you want to come back to the present moment. How do you do that? You listen. I'm on my walk right now. I can sit here, and as soon as I listen, I create space, right? Or you can feel your body, or you can focus on your breath, right? Notice, come back to the present moment, think about what it is that you want, think about what you can do to move forward, all right? That's the 4-step process right there. Definitely use it on your solitary walk. Also consider using it throughout the day. Notice yourself caught up. Come back to the present moment. As soon as you notice that, come back to the present moment. Think about what you want instead, and think about what you can do, right? So if I notice myself brooding over something, and I'm all upset and kind of worked up about a conversation I had or a text message or an experience, as soon as I notice that, I can come back to the present moment, listen, feel, or breathe. Then I can ask myself, what is it that I want instead? What do I really want? Not what's wrong, because I already know what's wrong. That's what I'm focused on, right? What do I want instead? When I ask myself that question, it's a very open, freeing attitude. I'm programming my non-conscious mind to look for the solution. I may not have it right away, but just asking that question, what do I want instead? And then, what can I do? What can I do to move forward? What can I do right now? That process right there is magical, and that is my vow when I leave my meditation and my little session every morning. The game is on. I'm watching this mind. I'm watching myself talk. I'm going to notice it. I'm going to come back to the present moment. I'm going to think about what I want, and I'm going to think about what I can do to move forward, okay? Now, give me feedback on that. I think it's awesome. It's super simple and it works. A few other things that will make this whole process a lot easier: focus on your health. When you find health, you find yourself, all right? This is absolutely true. We get people that, come on, bud, come into this progression or come into, working with us as private clients, and they learn how to eat real food, and all of a sudden, they're happier. All of a sudden, their life takes on a new trajectory without them even trying, right, then it makes it easier to focus on this deeper work, right? So find health and find yourself, which means you need to figure out real food. You need to have some kind of a fitness program in place. You need to manage your sleep, optimize your sleep. And I would say you need to meditate most days. You know, we can teach you and work with you on all that stuff, but you have to make those things a priority. If you just focus on your health first, a lot of this stuff starts to fall into place. And then it's easier to work with deeper stuff like this, but also this 4-step process we feel like is super, super solid. All right. I think that's about it. Ooh, wait, there was a quote that I wanted to read that we put into our little goal setting thing. And I will have this as a downloadable PDF along with this 4-step process, all right? Stand by, let me pull this up. All right, this is a quote that we have in our little goal setting guide, and it goes like this. This is what we're talking about when it comes to the non-conscious, unconscious mind, right? Plant your seeds through envisioning. An acorn is not an oak tree. If you look inside an acorn, you'll never find an oak tree or even all the necessary ingredients for an oak tree. However, if you plant the seed in fertile ground, and if you daily cultivate its purpose by feeding it, watering it, giving it adequate sunshine and lots of love, the acorn will learn to pull oak tree potentials from all over, which are scattered throughout the environment. These necessary ingredients have always been there as if waiting for the seed to pull them near. The same is true with every desire you have. The potentials for your desire are scattered throughout the environment in the form of money, materials, relationship, chance encounters, coincidences, epiphanies, and so on. All you need to do is create the seed, plant it in the fertile, cultivated unconscious mind, and let the power of the unconscious mind draw those potentials into your life. All right? Y'all keep it real. Care about you. Reach out if you need some help, all right? Holla.